It's Saturday, June 14th, and we're expecting severe weather across much of the United States today. With a focus on the Great Plains, we can see that the Storm Prediction Center has issued a slight risk up in the northern plains, with a marginal risk extending all the way from the northern plains down to the southern tip. Like yesterday, this is going to be mostly a wind and hail driven risk area, with our slight risk area being fueled by that slight 15% risk of wind, and then also being fueled by a hatched 15% slight risk of hail as well. And then we can't forget that we have a 2% marginal tornado risk over our slight risk area as well. Now this system is expected to linger, with our day 2 outlook covering most of the same areas. Then the Storm Prediction Center has actually gone ahead and issued a day 4 and 5 15% slight risk of severe weather as well. Moving back towards today, we're going to take a look at a couple of convective allowing models. Here's the HRRR, looking at our Montana risk area, and as we can see, as we can go into the afternoon, we get storm initiation along that boundary, which the HRRR is kind of illustrating by an area of convergence right here. And there's likely to be a couple of scattered storms up here in Montana, with storm coverage not really being super wide until you go down into northern Wyoming. But these cells will definitely pose the risk for all hazards of severe weather. Moving a little more south into our Central Plains risk area, we can see that yesterday's convection is going to stick around Saturday morning, with actually what is expected to be a MCS to redevelop out here Saturday morning in Kansas and push all the way into Oklahoma and redevelop as we go into later morning and midday, and possibly bring a pretty robust threat for wind and a smaller risk for all hazards of severe weather down there. But up here in our main risk area, we can see that storms are expected to fire after midday along our high plains convergence zone and boundary. And in their early stages, this is when they'll pose that more tornado and hail threat, but as they congeal more into that line, which it looks like might actually take a longer time, with them congealing more around sunset when that low-level jet picks up. And it actually looks like northeast Wyoming is going to get a round 2 of storms as that low-level jet kicks in and helps initiate these storms along that boundary back here and help develop storms down here near Iowa. And actually what it looks like is going to happen is that this MCS is going to push across Nebraska and South Dakota and kind of die as we go into the night hours. And then moving to the lowest part of our risk area here in the southern plains, we can see that mesoscale convective system pushing into Oklahoma in the morning hours and redeveloping around midday, and really looking like it's going to pose a somewhat robust wind threat and that threat for all hazards of severe weather in the form of small hail and a very small QOCS spin-up tornado threat. And then up here in our dry line and high plains convergence zone out here in western Texas and eastern New Mexico, it looks like our storms are going to be quite muted, and they definitely won't really have that chance to develop and organize, as that capping and upper level shear, which helps organize those storms, isn't really going to be there at all. But one thing we do notice is that a frontal zone from a remnant low left behind from an MCS is actually going to touch up storms in central Oklahoma and is going to be helped by that low-level jet around the evening hours. And this looks like it could actually pose the threat for all hazards of severe weather. So tornadoes, possibly large hail, and high winds. And it looks like this is going to redevelop into another mesoscale convective system as we push later into the night and even into Sunday morning. And of course, we can see a remnant low up here in southern Illinois associated with a short wave, which is going to touch up storms along our Dixie Alley and Mid-Atlantic regions all day long. These are mostly going to be scattered and weak, but if a couple of storms can cluster together, they could pose that threat for stronger severe winds. Here's the sounding from Montana. We can see from our photograph that we don't have a lot of low-level shear. And if we go down here towards our analysis box, we can see that our low-level spin and low-level shear won't be a lot, but as storms kind of get closer to that boundary, that could be enhanced, possibly increasing that tornado threat. But something that we do see is definitely sufficient upper-level shear to help spin those storms. With it reaching close to 50 knots, we see sufficient CAPE for that area, eclipsing 2200 CAPE. We see veering in our winds, which is going to help spin those updrafts. Our lowest cloud levels are low, which also helps to enhance that tornado threat. Our lapse rates are pretty solid at 8.2 Celsius decreasing per kilometer. And then for this region of the country, there's definitely sufficient moisture with some dry air aloft helping with that lift. And then our precipitable water is sort of low, but our downdraft cape is going to be in the moderate range, which could help produce that threat for damaging winds. And then because we're expecting strong rotating updrafts and we have a decent bit of cape right here at our freezing level, that is one of the reasons why large hail is definitely a possibility in this region of that area in eastern Wyoming going into western Nebraska. And this looks like it spells a threat for mostly damaging winds. Our photograph is not very elongated and we don't have a lot of low level shear. And this is really going to be the main hindering factor for these storms out here. They don't have enough upper level shear to sort of organize, but there is some veering in the winds, which is going to help to spin those updrafts. Our lapse rates are quite conducive at 9.2 Celsius decreasing per kilometer. Our lowest cloud levels are going to be higher, which is going to help with that evaporative cooling, which can kind of build those cool poles, which can enhance wind speeds and downdraft strength. And then we have quite a bit of dry air aloft, which can also help to strengthen those downdrafts. We have quite a bit of cape at around 4,200, and then our downdraft cape is going to be over 1,700. And despite our precipitable water being on the modest side at only 1.09 inches, that downdraft cape is definitely very substantial, and that's one of the reasons why high winds are expected for this area, along with the possibility of large hail because of that big swath of cape near that freezing layer, despite the lack of strong organizing updrafts out there today. Now, as we go further south into the risk area, this trend of our bulk shear decreasing and our capping increasing is one of the reasons why storm strength and storm coverage is not super sure out there today. But despite this, it does look like Oklahoma could definitely get some action from a mesoscale convective system near the morning and into midday. And if the atmosphere is able to recover enough out there, it could get around to with storms later at night.